well thought out, and it comes with a PowerPoint presentation as well. And I think Women's Interchurch Council here on Queen's Park Crescent has copies, or at least they used to, if you want to buy a copy, or you just write to Italy and they'll send you a copy. How many have heard of the Future Group? Okay, so you're familiar with their group in Southeast Asia. And a real turning point, I think, in this country is when they came up with a report. It's a 40-page study called Falling Short of the Mark. Has anyone read that? Okay. Well, what that report says, it gave Canada a failing rate for failing to provide temporary residence to victims to recover from their ordeals, and a lack of basic medical services. And this study, of course, received international coverage. And I think Lolly will touch upon this a little bit more, the immigration issues. And in conclusion, there's a few things. Although Canada has made significant steps in addressing this issue, there have been votes in Parliament, recommendations put forth. I'll just mention a few things that perhaps, actually not perhaps, that definitely need to be addressed in this country. And I apologize to the other speakers if you're speaking about this as well. But we'd like to see a reactivation of this interdepartmental working group on trafficking. I mentioned we met with them in March 2004, and in speaking to other NGOs, as far as I know, nobody has been contacted by them. And we've given them like broad hints through the Ministry of Justice, through Status of Women, etc. Like, you know, we want to get to work, but, you know, really, who should be coordinating this? The underfunded, struggling NGOs, or this interdepartmental working group on trafficking that consists of, I don't know, Lolly, you probably know, 17 or 40 different groups. So I touched upon victim services being available in the appropriate languages, and I think Lolly will speak about immigration guidelines. Now, interesting, in this book, there's a whole chapter on the internet. And we encourage law enforcement to actively monitor and investigate these internet chat rooms, mail order bride sites, and massage parlor escort ads in newspapers, such as Now or I. Like, we all pick up these newspapers to see what's on, but I mean, I can't bring it home because I have children at home, and we all know what's on those back pages. You know, and interesting that it's all these exotic women, Asians, Eastern Europeans, and so on. So, an interesting question. If, you know, the users can find these women, why is it that the police aren't finding them? So this is a question that I often ask. Speaking of the police, we need to encourage more coordination between government agencies and law enforcers, with continued mandatory education of all customs officers, immigration officers at the airports, law enforcement, and even judges to be on the lookout for what's going on. I happen to have asked 2 people who have daughters working at the airport, you know, just by fluke. And really, they look for minors coming across without parental consent. But from the front lines, human trafficking is really not on their radar screen per se. You know, next time you see a police officer, ask the local police officer what he knows about human trafficking, or she, and what mandate they have to, you know, so-called sniff out victims of trafficking. And unfortunately, there still exists many public biases towards trafficked women. And we have to remember, these victims are not just hookers or streetwalkers. They've been enslaved. Some people don't like that term, but you know, I don't know what else to use. And they should never be confused with their criminal captors. I mentioned the hotline number. I think we should pay attention to businessmen vacationing abroad. We won't get into that whole issue about Costa Rica and child sex tourism and all of that. We're all familiar that that's going on. And again, the issue of exotic dancers. Now again, I'm not an immigration specialist, but we all heard in the news quite a few years ago about the big government crackdown on eliminating this fast-track visa. Apparently, I'm being told, and I think Quintana mentioned this, that they're being let in now as waitresses. Because what happened fast-track process for exotic dancers. So I think the traffickers think, well, if we have to fill out all this paperwork, we might as well bring them in as waitresses. And what that does, it just throws it off the radar screen altogether. So again, in fact, if we are still letting in exotic dancers, as a bare minimum, we should follow up what is happening to them. Are they working as dancers, or are they required to do other things? I won't talk much about the international issue, but we do need to, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs needs to strive to eliminate transnational trafficking trade, organized crime, as George touched upon. We need to work with consulates of sending countries to ensure trafficking awareness of visa applicants coming into our country, and of course rehabilitating and assisting the victims that are here, and safeguarding the families and relatives of trafficked persons in the country of origin. And also, we need to ensure that the survivors of trafficking are not re-trafficked. And then getting to NATO, we really need to prevail that NATO forces actually combat and not contribute to human trafficking. So I'm just finishing off here. So I hope you've gotten some ideas of things that you can do, and I'd love to speak with you after. The other speakers will give you some more examples. Just discuss the topic at your local community group with your friends. Write a book review or an article to a newspaper. Organize a fundraiser for a shelter that assists victims of trafficking, either here in Canada or your homeland. Sponsor a theater group to visit your area. Now, Benjamin's group does a wonderful spiritual reflection on human trafficking, and it really does present it in a very spiritual and effective way. There's also Parmenu Productions, Lost in Traffic. We sponsored, actually, it was Canadian Auto Workers Union that sponsored Isadora Productions, Becoming Natasha. We had that at U of T last March. And again, there's various films on human trafficking: Data Forever, Human Trafficking, Sex Trafficking, and most recently Trade. And Who's Seen Eastern Promises? So that's, I mean, it's out there. And talk to your government representatives, write letters, approach school boards to make teachers and students aware of the issue. It could be mentioned at a World Issues course. And again, keep your eyes and ears open. I mean, there may be victims, in your midst that you don't know about. So by getting involved and active in the issue, you'll discover where you can be most effective. Both our groups help us help the Children Anti-Trafficking Initiative and Stop the Trafficking Coalition. We call upon everybody, all Canadians, to fight against this 21st century mass rape. And the trade in human flesh has taken on many horrible faces, not only for the sex slave trade, but includes trafficking of people for hard labor, organ transplantation, child soldiers, stem cell harvesting, forced impregnation so the fetal materials can be harvested for the cosmetics industry. There's a lot of work to be done, and we must keep in mind that every small dent counts. We thank Victor Mallory for writing this book and opening our eyes and hearts to this shocking human rights abuse, and in some ways providing the proof needed to engage politicians, governments, and communities worldwide. And allow me to echo his words in saying this is a call to all of us to stop the trafficking. Thanks.